Here we go.
Recording has started. Cleopatra.
Our longest movie ever.
It sure felt like it.
What did you think?
I broke it up into two. So did they, because there's an intermission in the middle.
That's when I broke it up too. I sit there go, when will I stop? Oh, intermission. Perfect.
It was long. They said it was epic, and boy, they meant epic.
1963, Cleopatra with our favorite Elizabeth Taylor.
Yes. And Rex Harrison and Richard Burton. So you can get, the next movie can have either of those two people in it, I guess, would be the best. I was thinking maybe Rex Harrison and My Fair Lady. That might be one. I haven't seen that one yet, so.
What one I was thinking of was Richard Burton in Circle of Two.
Okay, I've never heard of that one.
It's shot in Toronto, and Tatum O'Neal is in it. She's like 15 and he's like 65, and they sort of have a love affair, which wouldn't work in today's
no.
In today's day and age. But in that, it was, I mean, he didn't want anything to do with it. She's a little girl, leave me alone kind of thing. And then tries to act super mature. And
hey, we're not talking about Cleopatra now. We're talking about the maybe next one. So Cleopatra, a spectacle indeed. They won Oscars for like costumes and design and stuff like that, but they didn't capture a best picture. And I think they were going after that. In 1956, the Ten Commandments is again an what do you call it, historical one, and they were a nominee for best picture. And then Ben-Hur in 1959, so that's 4 years before this. It won like best picture, best Oscar to actor. And so Ben-Hur kind of racked up all the best stuff for the Oscars. And so I guess they were hoping Cleopatra would do the same thing, but they just kind of blanked out. I wondered if she would get it, but I didn't see anything that said that she was even nominated. I didn't look that part up, but
I didn't think she was that great of an actress in it. I liked her role and her part, but I didn't see her as like, even compared to that previous movie. What did we see last month? Cat in the Hot Tin Roof.
Yes. I can picture it and everything, but it's like those. I'm thinking Absence of Malice, and it's like, no, that's not it. It was the one before. So, what was interesting is that they are real historical figures. Like Cleopatra in the movie, to get to meet Caesar is wrapped up in a rug and a carpet, and that really happened. That historically, that's the story of how it went. So there, that part I liked, but it's like they had millions of dollars to spend on it, especially back then. And boy, did they spend it! Like the casts of all these extras and the parades that they had is like, it's sort of like it didn't hold up for now. Like there's certain old movies that hold up. I was thinking specifically of like The Wizard of Oz. That still holds up. Gone with the Wind. You can watch it and it feels just as good now as.
What movie did we see about the soldiers in the Civil War?
With Nicole Kidman.
Yeah,
I can't remember the name.
And that holds up. I mean, it's a newer movie.
Yeah,
but I thought it held up okay.
I didn't like the costumes. Like it bugged me that these soldiers are wearing this metal armor, and then they have bare legs and they're prancing around in these little kind of short little mini skirt armor things. And it's like, well, why wouldn't your enemies just hack your legs to pieces?
I think that was part of what you did back then. You attacked legs. You were a Roman legion and you attacked the heart, and you didn't go for the easy thing. What was it in the Civil War? They were saying about a certain thing that you did and it was honorable. I know what it was. You wore your uniform. which was barely, I mean, it was an awful thing to wear, and your big tall hat, and you would march off, and you would have to wear this uniform. Nobody just put on some dungarees and
Yeah.
put it off to war.
Yeah.
Which you think you would do, because there are farmers who would just put on whatever you know, but nobody did. They all put on, they all stood, and they marched the way they should have, even though that meant taking bullets. You did. It was what war was to them. So I can imagine it's even worse in Roman times, that they would sort of act in a way where you attack what you're supposed to. Now the whole movie gave me a feeling of a TV show. What's the TV show?
Oh, Star Trek.
Absolutely
Star Trek. It was like I was just waiting for the guy in the red shirt to show up, and and Captain Kirk to get transported into
play a liar or something.
Oh, absolutely. That's how they were doing it back then, and that was.
Well, it shows the influence that Cleopatra had. If you were to imagine what Roman times were. That's what Star Trek did, because remember, they would go back to Roman times for a few different episodes, and they thought of Cleopatra and what that meant, and the columns and the rooms and how you talked, and even the Vulcans and the Romulans. You know what I mean? How they sort of talked.
Well, there's the salute.
And
it reminded me of I think the Klingons did something like that, and
the Klingons and the Vulcans, even when you went back to planet Vulcan, and you hit they did that weird thing where they would take gunpowder or something, throw it into the fire, and it was their thing.
Yeah, I didn't understand that too much.
Yeah, I didn't know what that was either.
I'm sure it's absolutely symbolic of something. Positively,
but they did that for a big reason.
Yeah.
But why you would want to do that, I sort of don't.
And I like certain little touches, like they talked about reading the candle to tell the time and stuff like that. And it's like, yeah, of course it's night. How do you know what time it is? Well, the candle is burnt down that far. And of course they would have, candles that are telling the time. And it's like, I hadn't even thought about anything like that. So little touches like that, I kind of liked. I like that when they formed the turtle, like everyone put the shield out, and they walking around, and it's like, well, just chop off their legs. The turtle's going down. But and the war scenes were a little bit much, but I'm for the technology back then, I thought it was pretty, Yeah, I don't know how else you film, it's that many ships fighting in the water, but I thought they did okay with that.
Now, did you know Carol O'Connor was in this?
No.
So at the very beginning, they're showing the credits, and Carol O'Connor comes up, and I went, I'm going to be looking for him.
Yeah.
I don't see him anywhere, but he is. If you go to the MB and you look across at
sure. What part did he play?
Casca.
Okay.
O'Connor was in there, and I even though I knew,
didn't see him.
I wasn't 100% sure. It could have been another name. Oh, you know what's really funny? In the IMDb, next to Carol O'Connor is John Hoyt.
Okay.
As Cassius, and he's in his Star Trek uniform.
Okay, yeah.
The picture they used is him on Star Trek.
No, they're
so good.
Yeah. Well, they got some pretty good names. I mean, Roddy McDowell and Elizabeth Taylor were lifelong friends, and it's like, okay, they've been in a couple of movies together. So, what I didn't like is that, like, I can suspend lots of things. Like, this is Cleopatra, this is ancient Egypt. I get it, and I get that they're not speaking Egyptian. Like, I know they're speaking English, but when they have a really British accent, it just kind of rubs me the wrong way and makes me go, okay.
I didn't mind that.
No, it's like it took me away from it. I didn't expect them to do anything different, but it's like, yeah.
No, I back then everybody was British, and the son was born and he spoke with a British accent. It was great.
Yeah, that's the whole thing. It was too much of that. And the brother of Cleopatra, and he was like, goodness, that's an accent he had. And yeah, there's a few of them that had pretty
Harry Potter almost.
Yeah, so it was like, oh, it was distracting to me. It's an epic story. If you go through history, just who these characters all were, it's a pretty powerful story. And I thought they didn't make it too like cartoonish. It was a little bit, but yeah.
I didn't think it was so cartoonish. I was halfway through the movie going, we got to have another half of a movie, and there was another half of the movie because it was with Caesar in the first half, and Mark Anthony in the second. Anthony or Anthony?
And Antony. No H. Anthony.
Mark Anthony, and I mean I liked that relationship. It reminded me more of her and Richard Burton in real life, you know, the same kind of.
I wondered how much they were acting or just kind of digging up stuff. And she was like even bugging him about his drinking, and it's like, because he was known as an alcoholic, and it's like,
yeah. There's a really good Joe Rogan episode where they interview this guy. He's a security guy who understands security, and he does security to the stars, and he got his first gig with Elizabeth Taylor and Richard Burton. He was a 17-year-old kid, and they hired him to be his head of their security. And like, he didn't quite understand it initially, and he just got the job through a friend. And then it showed how he understood their relationship, and he would be fired by Richard Burton, and then she would, no, come back. He didn't mean that. And it was almost like he was the foil for the drinking, where he would be take the brunt of it when he would go drinking and cause a problem with her, and it would be hoisted on him. And that's why they kept him around. And he wrote a whole book on it, on that. I'll send you a link to that Joe Rogan podcast. And if it still exists, I'm pretty sure it does. And you'll be able to, that was a really in-depth,
interesting.
Probably for about 10 minutes, he talked about Elizabeth Taylor and Richard Burton and what they were. And I guess in some of he wrote a book, and he mentioned him in the foreword, this guy, the security guy. She did too. He was a really important person in both their lives.
Well, I guess they were sort of the Brad and Angelina of that day, although it's not Brad and Angelina anymore. But like Brad and Angelina were also the tempestuous relationship, and drinking was apparently involved, although that no one knew about it. Back then, they kind of, they talked differently about it. Dean Martin was known as a drinker, and there was, like Foster Brooks made a character out of being a drunk. So, and now that's a little, they call frowned upon, I guess. But I do like those stories of old Hollywood, because I've seen some of the movies now, and I find, some of those stories are pretty interesting. Someone who's really good at telling those old stories is Gilbert Gottfried. He had a podcast as well about, I think it was called Super Colossal something podcast. And he talked all about the old movie stars, and it was a little bit irreverent, but he had, stuff about the Three Stooges and the Marx Brothers. And
wow, I didn't know that.
No, and I listened to a good number of them. It's old Hollywood, and
I remember listening to it when he first came up with that podcast, Super Colossal Podcast. I went, what a podcast. There's a girl who has a podcast called The Great Podcast, or the Awesome, or the Good Podcast, something like that.
Yeah,
and she's got this really dry humor where she'll be interviewing somebody, and there'll be she interviewed Drake, and said, well, how much money do you have? Drake's like a billionaire, right?
Yeah.
And then she goes, would you buy me a car? But in this flat tone, she never smiles.
Right.
Almost like entitled, but you don't get that from her. It's just a really interesting podcast. This girl, she interviews all these different people, and she almost starts off with, I don't know who you are, and they go, but you invited me here. It goes, well, I was told to invite you here.
Yeah.
And then, so what are you famous for? And then they would say what they're famous for. And she'd go, but that's not very interesting. Like that, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
Did you do anything else? She's great.
Do you have a good hobby?
Yeah.
No, some of the stuff, because I didn't know too much of the history, I had a little bit of confusion when Caesar was having those seizures, And the same time they were talking about being poisoned by people. So you have tasters and stuff like that. So when he was having a seizure, I didn't know if that was actually a poisoning. And so there was some confusion, but I really like how she left the room and then she snuck back in to look through the little, it's like, that was pretty good. She was really clever and she was smart. She knew her stuff. She knew military strategy. And so she knew what she wanted in a lot of ways. And she, I appreciated a lot about how they did that.
And why, like, the history of why did Rome want to court Egypt? And it's because Rome raped and pillaged everything and needed more money to pay their troops and went, Egypt looks pretty rich.
Yeah, we'll take that too. And if you can do it through a marriage or something, all the better, right?
So I asked ChatGPT for this information and to confirm with myself that what I knew was true. Because in this, there's a lot of gold, and they talk about gold and the fact that Rome wanted Egypt for their gold. So how much gold do you think there is on Earth so far been mined?
No idea.
So if you were to take a football field and stack the gold up, how many meters or kilometers high do you think that just sort of picture in your head? Think of
until we run out of air.
Well, that doesn't make any sense. You mean high enough
to the atmosphere?
The atmosphere. So you're talking about 6
however many
miles, 8 miles, something like that is what that's the
total
amount of mined gold on the earth.
Sure.
It's 6 feet.
Oh. So we've dug up a lot of it. There might not be a lot left. Is that maybe why it's so precious?
It's 6 feet on a football field. Now that's very heavy because gold's very heavy.
Yeah.
But it's only 6 feet deep. My brain said 7 because I thought I heard that years ago. And so I went into ChatGPT and said, all the mined gold on Earth, if it were to be in a football field, how deep would it be? And it went 6.23 feet or something like that.
Wow. Okay.
I went, that is right.
That's why gold is so precious then. But it's like, you have to go to, I'm trying to think of a Mr. T's necklace has half of that.
Well, you think of Fort Knox would be filled, but in your brain, even Fort Knox had 1 inch of a football field. That's a lot of gold.
Sure.
Like in your brain. But then you think of every single little village in India has all the jewelry shops with all this gold. You know what I mean? In Korea, gold. Everybody collecting gold and everywhere. Gold, gold, gold. But then when you melt it down and pour it into a mold, it's 6 feet high.
Wow.
I know.
Yeah.
The gold goes a long way if you think about it. Think of the globe and zoom into a football field. It's such a teeny little area.
Yeah.
Of the world. It's a dot on a map, not even an area.
There's a reason it's precious, I guess.
Yeah.
So no, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I did think that when she found out that Mark Antony had married Octavia or whatever her name was, her anger about that, I thought the scenes at the beginning, as soon as she was told, and kind of the look on her face of disappointment and all that stuff, and then she got mad and started stabbing his clothes in the bed and stuff. That reminded me of like overacting, and it's like I thought she wouldn't have done that. She was like, okay, let's plot something else, is what I would have thought.
It would have been nicer for her to be sitting there and a tear rolling down her cheek.
Instead of
the face turning red with anger
or whatever.
And killing a bunny in your lap or something by squeezing it. Now her kid was named Caesarion.
Yes. No, wasn't Caesar? They call Caesarians because that child was taken out by a Caesarian section.
No, I think they had those in those days when you couldn't have a vaginal birth, you had a Caesarian section, and they did it back then.
Okay. So I don't think they did it very often.
No, I don't think so either. But I mean, the baby
I thought it was named after Caesar. Well, I mean, it's like somebody's dying here, so we might as well, do something. I guess it's
yeah.
They did have an incredible budget for the eyeshadow that she had on her face.
You know, it's funny when they had that, and it's sort of almost normal now. If girls go to a club, that's sort of how they would look.
Sure.
Silver, gold line stuff and overly done with glitter all over the place.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting there going, how come it's taken this long to get that to be normalized?
Right.
Because that's what a drag queen looks like 20, 30 years ago, right?
Yeah, yeah.
When you thought of a drag queen, it was somebody who put all that makeup on their face as thick as they could possibly do it.
Right.
And then that becomes normalized to now where that's what a girl would do when they're going out. Like if Karen were born 20 years ago, she would be full Cleopatra glittered going out.
I remember once buying the kids skin glitter that they could go out to wear when they wanted their skin to glitter, I guess. Let's see what else.
Conspiracy theory about glitter?
No, maybe.
It's a really weird thing. I just caught on to this. And that is, there's still only 2 companies in the US that make glitter. And then one of them's huge and the other one's small. And then somebody was interviewing somebody from the company who made almost all the glitter. And they said in the interview, pretty much all the glitter is bought by one company. And the interviewer goes, oh, what's the name of the company? He goes, I don't think they'd want you to know that was made of glitter. And that's it. And that's left this unanswered question that there's whole documentaries on about this, about people's theories behind who buys so much glitter, but they don't want you to know that that's glitter. Like, freak is that ever an open-ended puzzle?
I wonder if someone just wants to sell some glitter stock, so puts out this, mystery around it or something.
This was years ago, and it's still people are still having here's my theory on it, here's my theory on it, and it's supposed to be real. Like, it's not a.
Well, the glitter is well known in crafting circles as being just, don't make anything with glitter because it just becomes, to clean it up is just wicked. And I know that some people used to, in their cards, they would put some glitter kind of stuff in with like a greeting card, birthday card or something like that. So when people opened it up, it's beautiful glitter, but it's like, it's such a mess. And it's like, it's not nice at all. It's like confetti is now not allowed anymore either. So I'm sure that they would frown upon glitter.
So here's what it said when I asked ChatGPT. As my knowledge is cut off of September 2021, there isn't a well-known or widely accepted conspiracy theory related to glitter, and goes on a little bit. Then it goes, however, there was a strange mystery involving glitter that caught public interest in 2018, and maybe what you're referring to. In an interview with the New York Times, an executive of a major glitter manufacturing company claimed that one customer bought a large proportion of their glitter, but refused to let the manufacturer disclose what the glitter was used for. This led to wild speculation and curiosity, but it doesn't quite qualify as a conspiracy theory. So there's something.
So you have a product and you want to move it. So in an interview, you say, well, somebody's been buying this stuff and we don't know why. Or we're not why. We're not telling you why.
Because the client doesn't want you to know that it's made of glitter. That is so cool. That is like my brain went to fireworks, right? Like, because if you're gonna make glitter go like this, and then you're gonna burn them all, like you're somehow attaching, gunpowder to each of them. You're like mixing them with gunpowder, and then they go, and that makes them sparkly and shiny when they reflect off their burning.
And you don't want the environmental people to find out about that, right? Because oh boy, you're toast now.
That was the first thing that came to my mind.
Okay,
fireworks.
But that makes sense.
But there's not a one company that builds all the fireworks in the world. So
right. So a bit of a mystery there for you, Jeff.
More for you.
No, I like solving it. The mysteries have to come to me. That one has come to you, so it's up to you to solve it and make a TikTok video about how you figured that out.
Just came to you.
No, not that interested in glitter.
No, neither am I. I'm interested in that little secret story. I've seen a couple of documentaries on it. I've not watched them through to the end, and I would assume at the end they give their theory that must be. You don't write a documentary and go, well, we still don't know.
That's right.
You at least have some kind of
a sequel at least or something. You have to say something, otherwise it's
And in the next episode, we will talk about our
nothing. Yeah. What I found so interesting about the movies when they did those big parade scenes, like this, just this huge spectacle, and they had the dancers that came. The one girl didn't only had little pasties covering her breasts and stuff like that, and that really reminded me of Star Trek.
Oh, for sure, the dancing, even because they did that at Star Trek a
It's
number of times.
the same thing.
The green
So,
women from Alta something, and yeah.
well, there was one of the movies we were going to watch, and I don't think it was this one. I think it was one of the other ones that we were looking at that also had Elizabeth Taylor in it. It had Susan Oliver in it, and Susan Oliver played in the very first Star Trek pilot, the girl from Captain Pike who they found and tried to assemble, and they put her together. So that was Susan Oliver, and so she was in, I think, either Butterfield 8 or the other movie that you had suggested. So it's like, oh, I know her. So when you see all these Star Trek people showing up in the cast, but I'm going to have to go looking for Carol O'Connor. That's an interesting one.
Now there's another thing when you're looking for them. When she's in her palace, sitting behind her will be like almost like an overturned vase or something. It's just
there's a weird, I thought it looked like a there are these big things, and it reminded me of like baby bottle nipples or something like that.
I was thinking of breast nipples.
Yes,
and maybe it's
what is that?
So, yeah, I'm glad you noticed it. And they were just in behind her, and they wouldn't be sitting properly. They're off on an angle.
But they're all over the place too. Like I saw them in a few places, and it's like it's like someone, I got a good deal on some decorations. Well, let's put them in the palace somewhere. I got to use them somewhere.
Bought these off Etsy.
But it was so weird looking, and I couldn't come up with a
nipple,
purpose.
That's all I could think. And so they almost tried to do the Caligula thing, and that's funny because Malcolm McDowell, I think, was in Caligula too.
Roddy McDowell.
Oh, Roddy McDowell, that's right. And so, but the idea is they had a lot of over the top sexual innuendo stuff back in Rome. You know what I mean? Like that's they'd gone. What's the word when they sort of lost all morals? And
Greece was like that too, right?
Yeah, exactly. And but the idea, I sort of think that was part of that sexuality was just part of life, and we sort of hinder sexuality more now.
Yeah, and then it went to the Victorian age and went completely undercover, and then loosened up.
So I thought that meant life or something. The nipple is all I could imagine.
I didn't know what that was either, and I kept seeing, and I saw like a couple of them, and it's like, what in the heck is that? All it's doing is confusing the crap out of us, so we don't have the answer.
Maybe I should ask ChatGPT.
What are the nipples?
What are the nipples?
Well, they were nipples. I don't know what they were. There were these whitish, about the size of almost like a chair or something, but we couldn't tell if they had any function or if they were purely decorative. It was really hard to tell. But what else? I'm trying to think. So they die at the end, right? It reminds me a little bit of Romeo and Juliet.
Yeah, it very much was. You're dead. I'm going to kill myself. I'm dead. Like,
I love how she hid in her own tomb. Like that was pretty cool. But and how they got him up.
Would that have been the last place?
Well, because that's the last place she will be.
Yeah, but it's pretty safe. It's not it's the last place you will be. Oh, Jesus.
Yeah, that was clever. I thought that was good. But yeah, and they solved it like, well, how are they going to get him in? Well, we're going to pull him up with a rope, and then they don't explain how they got him down all the way.
Well, the fact is they were up there, her and her maidens.
Yes.
They pull him up, then they break the thing, which almost means that they're
Yes.
stuck up there forever.
Yes.
And then
Yes.
they come down and they're fine. Then they meet the people. In other words, there's
Yes.
a way out. He could have
Yeah.
climbed up the back stairs just like they came down the back stairs.
Yeah, or what? Yeah, they don't explain that.
It was sort of funny.
Yeah.
I didn't like the Malcolm
Roddy McDowell.
Roddy McDowell. I didn't like his character at the beginning, and I liked it near the end.
Well, I liked the idea of the Roman Senate. Like you can have, and I love how they gave him the different names. First he was, Caesar, and then they wanted to call him dictator and emperor, and they were going through all the names that they wanted to call him. It's almost like, well, Caesar was a great name, but I want to be something even more than that. And so the dictator was one of the names that they used. And there was a couple more. Like it was more than just a couple of them that they said, okay, this will intone all the power that we want to reflect in your name by, declaring you whatever. And I love the Roman Senate and how you couldn't really pull something off as a leader if you couldn't get the Senate behind you. So I know, I just appreciate the fact that there was a culture that had these safeguards against, a crazy person running your country.
And a bit of it reminded me of the current situation in the States with the crazy political, like the stuff that goes on behind the scenes. Because that's what you sort of watched happen here. And it was so normal for Cleopatra, to watch those unfoldings and to manipulate it the way she did. And that some of her words would mean the death of 1,000 people. You know what I mean? And and that was just, okay, like, well, let's not bring the grain in this week. Let's bring it in next week. Like that kind of sentence might be the death of so many of her people. Not that she said that specifically, but it's that. I know there was a couple of times where she said something. I went, ooh, that has major ramifications. That's not simple.
Well, and it was some clever writing. Like when she first was presented rolled up in the rug, she said, I rubbed you the wrong way. And he says, I don't know if I want to be rubbed by you at all. So it was like, there was a bunch of like, it's like that felt it felt clever. It didn't feel like, oh, they're trying to put a joke in there. It's like, I think she might've said that, like she was clever enough that seemed to be, part of it is I didn't get some of the characters. Like I didn't know who was really a bad guy. So like some of the people surrounding the characters. But I liked seeing how the servants, and how she had maidens who were helping her, and how there's a chance that one of them might be forced to turn on you and try and poison you and stuff like that. So like they fit a lot into the movie, but if they did not need that spectacular stuff. Like I thought it in some way it sort of distracted from it.
You're right. I would have been fine with a more close-in version
story, but they wanted epic, and they got epic. They got a cast of I don't know how many, and the costumes and just there's so many moving parts to this.
I think I remember hearing she was a bit of a pain on set. Wasn't showing up some days, that kind of thing.
Okay, I know she had physical problems for a while, and she did Cat in a Hot Tin Roof after her husband was killed in a plane crash. Right. And she had to come to work, and she, I don't know if she broke her back, but her back was injured as a young child falling off a horse. I think in a movie with Roddy McDowell, like that's how far their friendship went back. Because Elizabeth Taylor was like, she was the reigning queen of Hollywood for a good generation of and a classy lady, and friends with Michael Jackson, married Larry Fortensky.
There's an interview of her on Johnny Carson where she comes in at like near the end for her. She's wearing a leather jacket, trying to be young when she's probably 65, 70.
Oh, yeah. Well, she starred in General Hospital for a while, and then she put on a lot of weight when she was married to, I think, husband number 6 or 7. And then she did Lost All the Weight and Elizabeth Takes Off was a book she did. It might be an interesting read, just to read some of her, like the stuff she's written about. It would be interesting. She also did perfume, a lot of perfumes she sold, and she was really big. One of the first people in the AIDS cause, especially Rock Hudson. It was her friend, and I loved how that did not interfere with her tackling what at the time was you had people screaming, I don't want, those people to be serving me or swimming in the same pool. And she was like, no, that's not the way we're supposed to do it. So I appreciated those voices early on.
Yeah, it's a tough one, because wasn't polio because you swam in the same pool?
Polio? No, I don't. AIDS was that way. That's what they were talking about.
No, I know they were talking about it, but AIDS wasn't transmitted by swimming in the same pool, but I think polio was.
I don't know. I'm not sure about that. I know some stuff was.
Was polio
considered you call it?
Polio is a contagious viral illness that in most severe forms can cause paralysis, death. The virus can cause polio is not commonly spread through person-to-person contact. Specifically,
how does it
lives in an affected person's throat and intestines? It's typically spread through contact with feces, droplets of a sneeze or cough. As for swimming pools, it's technically possible.
Right.
Polio virus. I just remembered somebody, and I thought it was like a president of the United States or something. Somebody got it, and it was blamed on a pool like that. I remember that.
Yeah, I think that at that time they were just grasping at straws too, right? Like they don't really know. I mean, like COVID too. People were like, "Well, let's put masks on, and then none of us will get it." Well, that a lot of good that did, So there's a lot of things that you're going to try when you're worried about something wiping you out, because we sort of lost touch of the days of polio. Like we don't know what that was like. Even us, we had this, pandemic, but it wasn't taking out that many people that we knew. Like it wasn't taking on the young people as much as other stuff in the past has done.
Yeah.
Like if you were in high school, someone from your class will have, been polio has affected them.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know that happened here quite so much with COVID. So I think, you don't want to, minimize it. It was also not quite we haven't lived with the terror of the pandemic tried to give us that, but it wasn't quite the thing that it used to be when they had like the Spanish flu back in the early 1900s. I mean, that did take out people too. So I like how she said, "No mortal hand can destroy me," and she's sort of true. When she took her own life, it wasn't a mortal hand. She considered herself descendant of.
I like the whole ISIS thing. I like how she.
Yeah.
Even when she laid there in her death, you could sort of see the whole ISIS kind of thing around her, and the fact that they believed that they were gods just because somebody said, "I want to be a god." Okay, you be a god then. You know what I mean?
I pick you.
Well, it was like Caesar became a god. Like, in other words, we have to keep elevating, and we got to give him something more. And this year, he's they even said something like being dictator for a year. Like, what's dictator for a year?
I should have written down all the names, because it was emperor, dictator. Then there was a bunch of other ones, Caesar, and then I should have written them down.
But then they got to be gods, and you are a god.
Yeah.
So like, so their perception of God, I guess, was very different than our perception of God. Like their perception of God was above man, so you're a man above men.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like you were more valuable and more like stronger in battle. I liked it when Richard Burton woke up and there's nobody around. It was desolate. Mm-hmm. Everybody was killed.
Mm-hmm.
Alone, and they left him. I sort of didn't understand why they would leave him. Like,
Was everyone killed off? And like, yeah, there was too many sort of, I didn't know enough about the history, like, cause he came looking for her and then he ignored her. And it's like, oh, well, why did you go looking for her? And I didn't get that. So some of that is like, okay. And I liked where, she slapped him, she slapped him, she slapped him, and he slapped her. It's like, okay.
There was a scene once in the harbor, and there's a boat going by really fast. And it wasn't a terribly windy day because there were other boats just sort of sitting in the water. But there's one boat that had its sails as out as the rest of them, but somehow it was ripping across. It was so it wasn't with oars, like
yes.
And the oars looked pretty lame when they were sort of slapping the water.
Some of them were like, it's like, how is that thing even moving? Because it was like, who I thought of when I thought of that, the oars and the thing? I thought of the skit that Harvey Korman and Tim Conway did when they were in the thing and they were doing the oars and they were chained together and there was, hilarity ensues. That's one of their good skits. And it was a very, like, the old guy was one of those rowers.
Yeah.
So, okay, that was a good movie. Was it worth 4 hours of my time?
I think so. I'm glad I know it. And
I will watch it again.
It's a movie you need. I might even. It's a movie that you should know about, I think.
Yes, yes.
There's Hollywood history in that in a very deep way.
Yeah. I'm glad we watched it, but yeah, like now I want to watch the 10 Commandments again, and I don't think I've ever seen Ben-Hur. So yeah, I would like to watch more of that era. I would like to see Rex Harrison do with Eliza Doolittle in My Fair Lady, and it gave me a taste for some of the old movies, even though, and the other thing is I was thinking Gal Gadot, they redid Cleopatra with Gal Gadot, and I thought that might be good to watch. I think it's 2018 or something like that. It would be interesting just to see how they did it different. Yeah. I mean, now they have all kinds of technology and computer stuff that can make, an army really fast and not have to hire that many people and costume them. And so, the other scene I liked is when they pulled up the severed head.
Yeah.
Oh, they mean business. So
no,
yeah.
I don't know. Do we give it 1 out of 10 or 5 stars? What do we do? Or have we just changed our scoring thing every single time we talked about it?
Well, we like it or we don't. Well, there's always something to like about movies. Even the ones I don't like, there'll be something like, I like that actor. It's too bad he had to pick that crappy movie. But in general, I liked it.
I did, because it was Hollywood lore.
I didn't rapturously love it, but I did like it.
I liked it because of Elizabeth Taylor and Richard Burton.
Yeah.
That's why I liked it.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it was good seeing them work together. And she is she's beautiful. And to me, she reminded me of like a bit of a classy lady. And I believe that she and Dad are the same age. Look up her date of birth. Because Dad was born in 1932.
Let's see here.
Because I think she's awfully close to his birthday.
1932, February 27th.
Yeah, so she is 2 days older than Dad.
Yeah.
I remember thinking that.
Born in England.
Yeah. Yeah. So yes, same age as our dad.
Yeah, no kidding. Spouses: Larry Fertensky, John Warner.
Oh, yeah.
Richard Burton, Eddie Fisher, Mike Todd, Michael Wilding, Conrad Hilton Jr.
Yeah, so with Wilding, she had a son who was also on a soap opera. I think she had a bunch of kids.
So when she did the movie, she was with Eddie Fisher and then got with Richard Burton in 1964. Or
well, she stole Eddie Fisher from Debbie Reynolds, eh? After Mike Todd died, I think she hooked up with Eddie Fisher fairly quickly, and everyone was mad at her because Debbie Reynolds was, much loved, and it's like she stole her. I mean, they can get the press to twist it any way they want, but
Why aren't her children? She had 2 kids.
At
No,
least.
four kids.
Yeah, Michael Wilding is one.
But she has a Richard Burton child.
Does she?
Yeah, one with Richard Burton, one with Mike Todd, and two with Michael Wilding. Yeah. So, like, you want to see that Richard Burton kid.
Yeah, does he want to act, or she, or whoever it is?
So, child of Taylor began the process of adopting their second daughter, a German orphan.
Oh, yeah.
Their fourth husband, Eddie Fisher, after they divorced, Burton helped Taylor adopt this little girl whom named Maria Burton. Taylor reportedly had Maria go through nearly 24 surgeries to correct a genetic defect in her hips. 24 surgeries?
Yeah.
Jesus.
Yeah. They the only ones who could help with people who had the money to be able to help, medically help orphans and children who were up for adoption internationally.
So Taylor and co-star Richard Burton extramarital affair on the Rome set of Cleopatra was in the headlines, and the public disapproved. So they got mad at her, I guess, because.
Well, she was, but yet she rose above that. I mean, she took Eddie Fisher away from Debbie Reynolds, and she rose above that. So, she was not labeled by her actions like some have been, and lost careers over it.
Well, I remember her being interviewed, and she said she never had sex with anybody other than who was her husband. And what she meant was, I had sex with Richard Burton, but then he became my husband. So I only had sex with people who were my husband at some point in time.
Right.
That was sort of a funny way.
Yeah, word it correctly and you'll be okay.
Yeah. Look up Johnny Carson, Elizabeth Taylor on YouTube, and I think you'll come across a video of her on there. It's quite interesting when she's older. And she actually was quite engaging. And you can see how she was Hollywood lore, because even Johnny Carson had to bow to her.
Yeah,
it was obvious that she was the star and he was the.
Everyone's just kowtowing because they want to be in her good graces. Yeah, she was friends with Michael Jackson.
Yeah,
that was an odd sort of, but I guess she was up for display a lot too. So
yeah.
Okay, so we'll see what we do next. I will give you some options.
Okay.
And we'll see you next month. So
I think we did it on the 28th and didn't wait all the way to the 31st like I normally do.
You're kind to me.
Okay.
We'll see you. Bye.